Abraham Lincoln had a really great saying that if he had 6 hours to cut down a tree, he would spend the first 4 sharpening his axe.
You want to balance that kind of urgency with also deliberateness and figuring it out. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. And today we got a quick one for you, where we're going to be breaking down decision-making and coaching. So, Andrew, what's going on, dude?
Just hot on the heels of, we just finished the midterms with the nutrition coaching or the nutrition consulting certification course that we're rolling out. And, we found some things that we had missed, or at least maybe not fully explained, which is always the benefit of having those live experiences, that we get the feedback. We actually change our courses, unlike a lot of competitors that'll just write it and then they'll just kind of release it. But we were talking about something today that I thought was really relevant. And it's something that I think a lot of coaches really struggle with, and it's knowing what decisions to make in terms of how do you prioritize basic client behaviors. And, the feedback that we got from that was it was really beneficial. And so I thought that it would be a good topic for us to chat about, and then obviously with your perspective, both as a professional and a consumer and as a coach in general, I think
I know the most important decision they have to make first.
Sweet potatoes or rice.
There it is.
Oh, I fucking knew it. I knew it. I was like, wait a minute. Is it results or reasons or results, or rice and potatoes? I don't know.
Rice over sweet potatoes.
It's the little things in life that you just
income over impact. Wait, wrong way, wrong direction.
No, that's how it is. That's how it normally has been. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, what's decision path 1? I'm sure there's like a backstory.
Yes.
What's decision path 1?
A lot of people, when it comes down to this information, you have so much information at your fingertips. There's no shortage of stuff that you can learn, that you can apply, that you can ultimately really muddy up the process, which is what happens when most coaches try to learn everything before they get messy and get their fingers, get in the problem. And so there's something that we've rolled out and used over the last several decades, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, but you kind of have these two. It's the coaching decision-making matrix. And you kind of just draw a little tic-tac-toe box, right? Only it's just like a little quadrant, kind of like a Kanban diagram. But on the top, you have effort. You have high effort and low effort. And then on the left side over there, you have high impact or low impact. And the things we're always trying to maximize are the things that are low effort but high impact. And when people say the low-hanging fruit, sometimes that's what they're mentioning, is that what's the easiest thing we can change that's going to give us some positive benefit. And so when we were talking about, and to give some context, we have a midterm exam because we know that just application isn't enough these days. You do have to actually learn something. And when you learn the basic information, there's going to be a little bit of memorization in there, which is why we have a little bit of a midterm type of test your knowledge experience. And, one of the things that is more of an applied skill is learning how to triage, or basically take everything that your client's dealing with and put it in order of importance, and then rearrange that order of importance based upon the ability of the client. And so it's kind of where this really makes me think of the MSA model, which, I'd love for you to dive into here for a second before we go into how to use the MSA model and how to use the decision-making matrix here. And how can we potentially combine those two things so that way people always feel confident in their ability to generate a result for their client?
So MSA Method.
Method.
Close,
yes.
Close. I can't believe you forgot one of my 4 million different acronyms that I put together.
Fucking everything. It's crazy.
But MSA Method. So maintain, simplify, amplify. When working with a business, when working with a coach on any level, when working honestly even with a client, it's one of those components where I typically approach it of like, all right, what things do we at all costs have to maintain? These are vital. They're currently successful. They're what's holding the structure and foundation together right now. Those are the things that we just make sure that they're going to maintain. They're going to keep going.
Yep.
S is going to be simplify. A lot of times things are so overcomplicated. They are costing a lot of money maybe, and there's some condensing that can happen and save some money. There's there's just way too much going on, from a process standpoint, from a load standpoint, from a money standpoint, that we really need to focus on how do we reduce the strain, reduce the cost, reduce the time investment to make those things
Mm-hmm.
happen. That's going to go in the S. And then A, the Amplify, is what things are we going to actually go after and try to
Mm-hmm.
blow them up. These are the things that are going to enhance the business, grow the results, whatever it might be. As
Mm-hmm.
it relates to kind of looking at this decision making matrix, I guess, if you will, and we talk about like high impact and easy, that's probably the stuff that we would layer into the A side of things. Like, we're going to amplify these and like, hey, let's run with them because they're going to produce a result.
Mm-hmm.
The maintain stuff is probably the things that are a little more on that like low outcome side of things. They might be a lot of kind of input to get there, or maybe a little, maybe less input per se on that bottom
Mm-hmm.
side. But they're likely things that like, we can go focus on, but we're not going to get a crazy outcome on it. Maybe right now we can't get a crazy outcome on it. And then that simplify stuff, like the stuff that's low return and a lot of effort, like why even bother, So
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's probably a bridge in that very quick version of it there. Different use cases in certain scenarios and probably similar in others.
Yeah. And I think that when we talk about what to do versus what to pay attention to, that's a really important distinction that a lot of coaches often miss, is that they try to, and there's something called the righting reflex, RIGHTING, which is I see a problem, I must fix a problem. I see a problem, I must fix a problem. And rather than spending a moment to identify all the problems, they start fixing these things, which is why they feel like they're constantly putting out fires and they're not gaining any traction, because they're truly not identifying which elements are going to be the high impact ones. And so it's easiest to, handle a client complaint, right? It's harder cognitively and experientially to go through and sort strategy and industry trends, right? And then to kind of bridge the gap between the two. And so the MSA method, and the decision making matrix here effectively kind of blend the two. And the decision making matrix allows you to list everything that you should be doing from a behavior or an action outcome. And then you categorize it. Is it going to be very hard? Is it going to take a lot of effort? Is it going to take a lot of resources? Is another synonym for effort in this case when you're looking at the matrix, right? The other thing that you want to look at is, well, if it's going to take a lot, if it's going to take a little, obviously if it's like 2 seconds, might as well just do it. Or on the other end of the spectrum, if it's going to take a lot of, or excuse me, if it's going to yield a lot of impact. So let's say that you wanted to, as a coach, reorganize your entire coaching system, which is something we've done with some of our coaching clients that are trying to build these businesses that are 135K a year. And, there's one particular person, shout out to Leah. I'm sure she'll love hearing her name, but she has had a lot of high impact stuff that we've worked on here. And admittedly, it's been high effort. There's been a lot of data collection. There's been a lot of data cleaning, and there's been a lot of data basically kind of like finessing. And those are the things that you have to do before you even start to make sense of the information you're collecting. And I think a lot of people forget that. And so it's important to start collecting it so that way eventually you can look at it. And that's what you want to start to use to identify, is this something that's going to be very impactful? We had her at one point go through every single week of her 6-month program. And we looked at, I think it was like somewhere near 40 clients or something like that she had on her roster. And we looked at where they dropped off or where their success rate, which some people call a compliance rate, like how much of their plan did they do that week? And that is very time consuming because you have to go into the app, you have to pull up each person, you have to look at each week that they're looking at, and you have to do that times however many clients you have. But that's the stuff that starts to help you understand like what you need to change. Do you need to do that up front? Probably not. In fact, you probably don't have enough information to do that. So this is kind of the catch-22 of where people say, I need to wait, I need to learn more before I start getting, my hands dirty. Frankly, if you're going to do that, you're going to miss out on the opportunity to understand where the gaps are that you can then quickly solve, and everything becomes high effort, high impact. Well, if you don't have the resources and you don't have the bandwidth because you're working a traditional 9-to-5 job, and you're also now a family person, right? You have all these things that are pulling you away. You can't afford to do something that's high effort necessarily, which means you maybe have to give up on the impact a little bit, or you have to sit and think about it just a little bit longer to organize these things so that way you're doing the biggest impact with the least amount of effort. And I think that to couch this, Abraham Lincoln had a really great saying that if he had 6 hours to cut down a tree, he would spend the first 4 sharpening his axe. And I think that that's really where a lot of people these days are thinking, if I do this, if I jump in, if I start going to town, sometimes you just get really exhausted, and it's not usually because of the effort, it's more because you're in your head. But, spend some time, collect the information, look at the information, and then constantly reorganize that into effort, impact, and then use the MSA method model. MSA method. I haven't had much sleep recently. It's fine. But when you're thinking about what do you want to do? Just because it's high effort, high impact, that doesn't necessarily mean you want to simplify that thing yet. Maybe that's something you need to maintain. That maybe that's something you need to amplify. But frankly, if it's high effort, you really can't amplify it because it takes too much of your resources and your attention being one of those things. So that's where maybe you need to simplify it because it's something that's giving you a lot of return, but it is taking and sapping you of your ability to do the other things. So hopefully that kind of just makes sense of taking these items and thinking through them a little bit of what do I need to pay attention to? And the first part is you have to pay attention in general, and you have to start taking some notes and then reviewing them. I mean, Steve, anything else that you have on that? Just bridging the gap?
I think, and I don't want people to mistake this as a reason to go slow. There still needs to be urgency in figuring out what you need to be working on. Collecting data or figuring out what you need to work on can still take 8 hours in a day. And it might sound like a long day of doing something that's probably not enjoyable. But the faster you get that done, the faster you can get to work. There's some truth to let me go out and solve a problem and then, just keep going and eventually I'll solve the right problem. But there's also some truth to every time you solve a problem, you change and alter all of the other problems that exist and potentially create additional problems. So you want to balance that kind of urgency with also deliberateness and figuring it out. But you need to have a general lay of the land. You should be able to answer some basic questions about your business, the customer service side of things, the client experience, what they're going through. And with that, you probably have a gut instinct of, I need to solve this thing. Great. Go get a lot of data around that thing. Not a month's worth of data, not a month's worth of time, but spend a day or two, figure that component out, and then continue moving forward on solving what is the most urgent based upon, again, input and effort versus outcome and kind of the ROI, if you will, on there. And that's going to be the thing that you need to go focus on. So don't use it as a reason to not move, but also don't recklessly move because you're going to end up creating more problems for yourself downstream that you have to solve anyways.
Yeah. And, there's always going to be a problem to solve. So don't freak out. Like whether you solve today's problem, you're going to have another one crop up tomorrow. If someone's going to ask you to meet a deadline, someone else is going to ask you to meet a deadline as soon as you meet that one. Like there's, cramming a 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound sack, kind of that whole ideology of, there's always going to be a problem. And so when you think about that, it's gather the most information that you need to make the best decision in the moment. And sometimes you might only have a split second to sit there and be like, all right, this is all I have. I need to make the best decision. But that's where if you collect the decisions, those are the things that you want to pay attention to, not some random information about mental health awareness in Malaysia or, transgender reassignment surgeries in South Africa. Like that's not really relevant information for you. And so, shout out Doge. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But anyways, what we're looking at the end of the day is what do you need to move the needle forward right now? You're not picking your outfit out based upon what the weather is going to be 7 years from now. So exactly what Steve said, don't slow down. If anything, find ways to speed up your data collection cycles or how many, and by the way, decision and data are almost synonymous in this case. How many decisions can you make quickly and how quickly can you learn from those decisions in a way that's not going to be catastrophic for your business? And those are the people that seem like they gain the most traction very quickly. So anything to close this out as we promised a short episode, Steve?
No, go draw out your matrices and your methods and all the things, put the pieces of data in there and start taking some action on the thing you need to solve most. So if you like the episode, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel so you get our future updates, and throw a comment down there if you want us to chat about something specific. Until next time, gang, appreciate you joining Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition, gang.